Welcome back to another deep dive. I have to tell you right up front, I actually have my water bottle right here next to me.
Oh, that is a very smart move today.
Full to the absolute brim, and I have honestly never been more grateful for it.
I mean, considering where we are going today, I don't blame you at all.
Right, because today we are heading to a place where water is literally more valuable than gold.
Or diamonds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And certainly more valuable than the millions of dollars of methamphetamine just sitting in the back of an old RV.
It sounds like we are heading straight into some incredibly hostile territory.
We are heading into an absolute furnace. I want you to really picture this scene. The vast, unforgiving New Mexico desert.
Just miles of nothing.
Right. It is the kind of landscape that looks, gorgeous on a postcard, but it feels like it is actively trying to kill you if you stand in it for more than 10 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. The sun is just this physical weight on your shoulders.
And the air is so dry, it just sucks the moisture right out of your skin. And right in the middle of this absolute nothingness, there is a 1986 Fleetwood Bounder RV.
Ah, yes, the crystal ship.
The crystal ship. And inside that ship are two men who are essentially melting. They're trapped in this literal and metaphorical pressure cooker of their own making.
We are, of course, talking about Breaking Bad Season 2, Episode 9.
Titled 4 Days Out.
Which is just a legendary hour of television. I mean, when you talk to fans of the show or even television critics who analyze that whole golden age of TV era, this one frequently comes up as a masterclass.
Oh, for sure. It is tight, it is terrifying, and it is so deeply character-driven.
And it has that classic bottle episode feel to it, right?
It does, but, with a massive twist.
Yeah.
Because usually a bottle episode is designed to save money.
Right, you just lock the cast in a single room.
Like the Fly episode they do later in this series, you just let the characters talk. It saves on location costs. It saves on guest stars.
But 4 Days Out is so interesting because while it isolates the characters exactly like a bottle episode would, it was absolutely not a cheap shoot.
No.
They hauled that massive RV out into the actual desert. They were dealing with real location, shooting the natural lighting, all the harsh elements.
So it gives you that intense psychological claustrophobia of a bottle episode, but it has the cinematic scope of a grand Western.
It really does feel like a Western. Two desperate outlaws stranded out on the frontier.
But before we get into the whole survival horror aspect of it.
Because it definitely turns into a horror movie.
Oh, very quickly. But first, we need to set the stage based on our source material today. We are pulling directly from the Wikipedia entry for 4 Days Out to really unpack this.
And we have a lot of ground to cover. We are looking at the plot mechanics, the production notes, the critical reception.
We are going to break down exactly how a seemingly perfect plan turns into a near-death experience. For context, this episode aired on May 3rd, 2009.
Directed by the brilliant Michelle MacLaren and written by Sam Catlin.
And the mission of our deep dive today is to really look at the anatomy of a disaster. Because this isn't a situation where a meteor just randomly hits the RV.
Right, it is not some unpredictable act of God.
Exactly. It is a very predictable cascade of human error. Just a series of small, seemingly insignificant mistakes that just pile up until they become fatal.
It is the butterfly effect, but with meth and dead batteries.
I love that. And beyond the mechanics, we really need to look at the psychology here. We have Walter White and Jesse Pinkman.
The teacher and the student.
The master and the apprentice.
Yeah.
Usually Walt holds all the cards, right? He is the intellect. He's the authority figure.
But when you strip away civilization completely, when you take away the classroom and the controlled lab environment and just drop them into a brutal survival situation,
that power dynamic shifts violently.
It really does. And I am especially focused on the psychological implications of how this whole ordeal wraps up.
Oh, the ending. I mean, I don't want to spoil it right this second for anyone listening who somehow hasn't seen it, but the ending of this episode completely redefines the concept of good news.
It is one of the most twisted psychological reveals in the entire run of the show. It creates this fascinating paradox that we absolutely have to unpack later.
So to everyone listening, definitely buckle up, check your fuel gauge, make sure you haven't left your keys in the ignition.
Good advice.
Let's dive into 4 Days Out. We really have to start with the catalyst for this whole thing. Part 1. Why are they out there in the first place?
Right, because they didn't just wake up and decide to go on a fun camping trip.
No, the motivation here is incredibly grim.
Oh.
It is entirely rooted in mortality.
We have to remember where we are in the timeline. It is the middle of season 2. Walter White has been cooking meth specifically to leave a financial nest egg for his family.
Because he has terminal lung cancer.
Exactly. He has been undergoing grueling chemotherapy. He is losing his hair, he is losing weight, and he is just constantly nauseous.
And early in this episode, we start with a medical appointment, a routine checkup.
He goes to the hospital for a CT scan and a PT scan. The medical goal here is just to see if the chemotherapy has had any actual effect on the size of his tumor.
And anyone who has dealt with cancer, either personally or with a loved one, knows that what they call scanxiety is a very real thing.
Oh, the waiting is absolute torture.
And the source material specifically notes that the doctor tells Walt the official results won't be ready for a week.
Can you imagine that?
It is horrifying. You are staring down the barrel of a gun, and the doctor essentially says, come back next Tuesday and I will tell you if the bullet is in the chamber.
It is an agonizing position to be in. But Walt is a man of action, and perhaps more importantly, he is a man of profound arrogance.
Yes, he is.
He believes in his own intellect above absolutely everything else. So while the doctor happens to be out of the room or while the scan is just coming up on the monitor, Walt decides to look at the screen himself.
He peeks at his own scan.
He does a lot more than peek. He analyzes it. He looks at the image of his lungs, and he spots what the source describes as a prominent growth in the left lung.
Is this big white blob.
A blob, exactly. Now, a trained radiologist spends years learning how to properly interpret these grayscale images.
Right, because a shadow could be anything.
Exactly. It can be fluid, it can be scar tissue, it can just be localized inflammation.
But Walt sees a white spot on a screen, and his brain just immediately locks on to the absolute worst-case scenario.
He plays doctor. He decides right there in that cold little hospital room that his cancer has spread.
He diagnoses himself.
He thinks the tumor has grown and that the chemo has completely failed. He interprets that fuzzy image as an immediate, unappealable death sentence.
In his mind, the clock hasn't just kept ticking, it has completely jumped forward. He doesn't think he has a year anymore.
He thinks he maybe has weeks, maybe even just days.
And this detail is so crucial to his character. He doesn't ask the doctor. He doesn't wait for the official medical report. He just takes his own amateur interpretation as absolute scientific fact. This is that classic hubris we always talk about with Walt. He assumes that because he's a genius chemist, he's automatically a genius doctor too.
And a genius lawyer and a genius criminal.
Right. It is the ego taking the wheel.
And that hasty self-diagnosis triggers a full-blown internal panic. But interestingly, it is not really a panic about the act of dying itself.
No, it is a panic about money.
The financial panic. He goes home and he immediately starts crunching the numbers. We literally see him writing it all down.
He is looking at the cost of the medical treatments, the potential cost of surgery, the basic cost of living for his family.
And then he has to factor in a massive new expense, which is Saul Goodman.
Saul. The criminal lawyer.
Saul is a necessary evil for them at this point, but he is a very expensive one. Saul takes a significant cut just to launder Walt's drug money.
So Walt realizes that despite all the crazy risks he has taken, despite the people he has literally killed or hurt,
he is running a deficit.
Yes. If he dies next week, he leaves his family with almost nothing.
That realization has to be absolutely crushing for him. The entire moral justification for Breaking Bad in the first place was to provide for them.
Right. If he fails at the providing part, he is just a dying criminal who ruined his family's reputation for zero actual gain.
So he enters this state of frantic, manic urgency. He decides he needs to cook. And he needs to cook every single drop of chemical they have.
He calculates they have enough methylamine to produce a massive amount of product, but the catch is, they need to do it right now.
But there is a major problem with that plan. The other half of the team, Jesse Pinkman, is not exactly in a heavy work mode right now.
No, Jesse's actually in a relatively good place emotionally for once.
He is dating his landlord, Jane Margolis. He is really trying to put some of his recent trauma behind him.
He is absolutely not interested in driving out into the blazing desert for a 4-day weekend of intense manual labor.
So Walt does what Walt always does best. He lies.
He manipulates the kid.
He tells Jesse that their supply of methylamine is going to spoil.
Spoil. I always love that specific detail.
It sounds so plausible if you don't know anything about chemistry.
Right, like it is just a carton of milk that somebody left out on the kitchen counter.
But it is chemically absurd. Methylamine is a highly stable industrial chemical. It does not go bad in a few days.
But Walt knows perfectly well that Jesse doesn't know that.
Exactly. Walt weaponizes his authority as the scientist to trick Jesse into compliance. He invents this fake emergency just to solve his own internal crisis.
It is just classic high-pressure sales tactics. We have to go right now or we lose absolutely everything.
And then Walt has to cover his tracks on the home front, too. He tells Skyler the most classic lie in the book. He says, I am going to visit my mother.
The mother who is living in a nursing home several states away, right?
Right. It is a highly strategic lie. Skyler isn't exactly on great terms with her, so she isn't going to call his mother to check up on him.
So it is the perfect cover story for a few days of total radio silence.
But I want you to really think about what this means on an emotional level for Walt. He genuinely believes he is actively dying. He believes these might actually be his final days on Earth.
Yeah.
And instead of spending those precious final days with his wife, with his teenage son, with his unborn baby,
He isolates himself completely.
he builds this massive wall of lies just so he can go perform this twisted act of love out in the dirt. It is deeply tragic, really.
He is actively destroying his connection to his family in order to supposedly save his family.
That is the central paradox of Walter White's entire existence. So the plan is set. They load up the RV.
They pack all the equipment, the glass, the chemicals.
The Funyuns.
Can't forget the Funyuns.
And they head out. This brings us to part 2, into the desert.
And the source material emphasizes that they go deep into the desert. They don't just park at the local junkyard this time.
They drive miles and miles completely off the paved roads, deep into this remote scrubland, just to ensure they won't be found by anybody. They want absolutely zero chance of interruption. They find a spot that is just perfectly isolated. It is nothing but sky dirt and brutal heat.
And they get straight to work. Now, the show itself often makes the cooking process look kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. We usually get those slick montages with the upbeat music.
But this specific episode makes it very clear that this is a punishing grind. This is hard, toxic industrial labor.
It is a marathon session. They are working around the clock. And remember the physical environment they are in.
They are inside a giant metal box sitting directly in the desert sun.
They're wearing full hazmat suits, heavy breathing respirators, thick rubber gloves. It has to be easily 120 degrees inside that RV.
And Walt is a sick man. He's coughing, he's physically weak, but he just pushes through the pain.
He is entirely fueled by adrenaline and sheer terror. Every single ounce of Crispell he sees is a dollar sign for Skyler and Walter Jr.
He drives Jesse relentlessly. It is just keep cooking, keep cleaning, and start the next batch. Over and over.
And the final yield from all that labor, it is absolutely staggering.
It is the biggest cook they have ever done by far. Walt estimates they have produced 42 pounds of methamphetamine.
42 pounds.
I mean, that is just a comical amount of illegal drugs to be sitting next to.
And Walt, being the human calculator he is, immediately breaks down the street value. He estimates that even if they sell it at a lower wholesale price just to get rid of it quickly, it is worth approximately $672,000 each.
$672,000 in cold cash from one single weekend of work.
For a high school chemistry teacher who has been terrified about paying his mortgage, this is it. This is his magic number.
This, the absolute finish line for him. He has done it. He has secured the nest egg for his family.
And that specific feeling right there, that rare moment of pure triumph, that is the exact pivot point of the entire episode.
Because up until that exact moment, it is playing out like a heist movie. It is a caper. They pulled off the big job.
But then the mood shifts entirely. The frantic working energy dissipates. They are filthy. They are exhausted, but they are ecstatic.
They finally strip off those awful suits. They pull out the lawn chairs. They just sit and look at the beautiful desert sunset.
And Jesse, being a normal human being with normal human needs, just says, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go find a hotel, get a hot shower, and eat a steak.
It is a completely reasonable request. They have the money. They have the product. It is time to go home and celebrate.
Walt completely agrees. They pack everything up. Walt gets into the driver's seat. He puts the key in the ignition. He turns it.
And then click. Just click, click, click.
That sound?
That sound is the sound of your stomach instantly dropping right through the floorboards.
It really is the sound of the entire genre of the show changing on a dime. We are no longer watching a crime drama. We have just violently crossed over into a survival horror film.
Let's really break down part 3 here, which is the crisis itself. Because this isn't just a streak of bad luck. This is a complete comedy of errors.
Or a tragedy of errors, depending on how you look at it.
It is a perfect storm of tiny mistakes. The root cause is identified almost immediately. It is the RV battery. It is completely dead.
And why exactly is it dead?
Because of Jesse Pinkman.
The source material explicitly notes that Jesse left the keys in the ignition switch during the entire multi-day cook.
He didn't have the engine running, obviously, but he had turned the electronics on.
Maybe he just wanted to listen to the radio while he worked, or maybe he just absentmindedly forgot to pull them out of the slot.
But the RV has all those running lights on the outside, right?
Yeah,
And the dashboard indicators.
exactly. So over the course of 2 or 3 full days, that slow, silent, parasitic drain just killed the massive battery completely dead.
So the battery's dead. Now, if this happens to you in a grocery store parking lot, it is a minor annoyance. You just ask a stranger for a jump start.
But out here, they are miles and miles from any semblance of civilization.
But wait, they're supposedly resourceful guys. And they actually have a generator with them. They brought a portable gas generator to power all the heavy lab equipment.
Right. So basic logic dictates you just use the generator to jumpstart the RV battery. Boom, problem solved.
And that absolutely would work, except for error number 2. They used up all the gasoline in the generator during their marathon cooking session. The generator tank is bone dry.
Okay, well, they are sitting inside a giant motorized vehicle that runs on gas. They have a massive fuel tank bolted to the RV itself.
Right, so the obvious solution is to just siphon some gas out of the RV tank and put it into the generator.
Now, have you personally ever tried to siphon gas out of a car?
I can safely say I have never tried it.
It is really not an easy process. You have to get the negative pressure going, usually by physically sucking on the end of a plastic tube.
And you inevitably end up with a mouthful of raw gasoline. It's messy, and it is dangerous.
And in their specific case, it is totally disastrous. They do manage to get some gas flowing, but in the chaotic process, fuel spills everywhere.
It spills directly onto the extremely hot metal casing of the generator they were just using.
And we all know exactly what happens when you combine raw gasoline fumes, intense heat, and oxygen.
Fire.
The generator instantly catches fire. Now, this is a critical, catastrophic moment.
They are standing right next to an old RV that is packed full of highly volatile explosive chemicals and a giant gas tank.
If that fire spreads and the RV goes up, they are nothing but pink mist in the desert.
So pure panic sets in. This is the primal lizard brain taking over completely. Jesse sees the fire. He spats a large plastic jug of clear liquid sitting nearby.
He doesn't think, he just reacts.
He grabs the jug and he dumps the entire thing directly onto the flames.
The fire goes out. The immediate crisis is technically averted. The RV doesn't explode into a fireball.
But then the horrible realization hits them both.
What exactly was inside that jug?
It wasn't just some non-potable cleaning water. It was their drinking water.
It was their entire supply of fresh drinking water.
Oh man, it literally makes me thirsty just saying it out loud.
Yeah.
He put out a grease fire with the only thing keeping them alive out there.
So let's look at the actual situation map now after this chain reaction of failures. Number 1, the RV battery is completely dead.
Yep.
Number 2, the portable generator is now damaged from the fire and it still has no gasoline in it.
Right.
Number 3, they have no safe way to extract any more gas from the RV tank without starting another fire.
And number 4, which is the most critical factor, they have 0 water left in the middle of the New Mexico desert.
And this is exactly where the title of the episode 4 Days Out becomes a literal ticking countdown.
Because the human body is amazing, and it can go weeks without food. But water, out in that extreme heat.
You were talking about severe dehydration setting within hours, complete organ failure within days.
The biological clock has accelerated incredibly rapidly.
It is no longer a question of Walt's cancer killing him in a month. It is a stark reality of the sun killing both of them in 48 hours.
And this leads us right into part 4, which is the desperation phase. This is where the psychological deterioration really begins. As the physical heat rises, the tempers absolutely flare.
Which is completely natural under the circumstances. The blame game starts immediately. Walt starts screaming at Jesse.
He calls him an idiot. He just endlessly belittles him. Why did you leave the keys in the ignition? Why on earth did you use our only water?
And Jesse fights right back. He yells, "You are supposed to be the genius. You are the one who aggressively dragged us out here in the first place."
But all that intense screaming and fighting is just wasting precious moisture from their bodies.
They realize they need an outside lifeline. They're completely cut off from the world. But wait, Walt actually has his cell phone in his pocket.
Now, Walt is incredibly paranoid about his phone. He knows that using a cell phone creates a digital record.
Right. If he makes a call out there, the cell towers will ping his exact location.
Or his monthly bill will eventually show a long-distance call made from the absolute middle of nowhere. Skyler's an accountant. She would definitely notice that, and it completely ruins his visiting my mother lie.
But he does the mental calculus. Dying in the dirt is objectively worse than getting caught by his wife, so he reluctantly hands the phone over to Jesse.
And who do they decide to call? They obviously can't call the police for rescue. They can't call AAA for a tow.
Because they're sitting inside a rolling methamphetamine laboratory.
So they call the only person they know who might actually help them without asking too many questions. Skinny Pete.
Good old reliable Skinny Pete.
The plan itself is quite simple. Just tell Skinny Pete roughly where they are located, have him drive out and bring plenty of water and some heavy-duty jumper cables.
But this entire survival plan relies heavily on Skinny Pete's personal navigation skills.
Which, as the Wikipedia source politely points out, are severely lacking.
Skinny Pete gets terribly lost. He tells Jesse he is far off the directions they gave him.
You can just vividly picture him driving around aimlessly in his beat-up car, looking at a random cactus and thinking it is the turnoff they mentioned.
And while Walt and Jesse are sitting there waiting and hoping for him to arrive, the cell phone battery simply dies.
And that right there is the final severing of their tie to the outside world. No working phone, no water, no engine power.
They are truly profoundly alone now.
The isolation is absolute at this point. And now we really start to see the severe physical toll it takes on them. The makeup department on the show did an absolutely incredible job in these scenes.
Oh, the cracked, bleeding lips, the dark, sunken eyes, the way their skin starts to look like dry parchment paper.
And for Walt, the physical toll is massively compounded. Because he is an active cancer patient, he is already immunocompromised. He is incredibly weak before they even get stranded.
There is a scene that is just tough to watch where he desperately tries to manually hand crank the broken generator.
Oh man, that part is rough. He is basically trying to trickle charge the RV battery.
He is hoping that just generating a tiny localized spark by turning the heavy metal crank by hand will be enough.
He is out there in the blistering, unshaded sun, completely dehydrated, and he is just turning and turning that crank with everything he has left.
But it is completely futile. The basic physics of it just don't work out. You physically cannot generate enough sustained amperage by hand to charge a massive dead RV battery.
And his broken body finally just gives out. He starts coughing violently. He actually coughs up blood, and he collapses into the dirt.
This specific moment is the true emotional turning point of the episode. Because up until this exact second, Walt has always been the general.
Right. He has always been the one dictating the plan.
But here, he finally breaks. He completely gives up.
He drags himself inside and he lies down on the bed in the back of the RV. He just accepts the grim fate he thought he saw on that X-ray screen days ago.
He essentially thinks, well, I am dying anyway. The universe just decided to move up the timeline a bit. Maybe this is exactly how it ends.
I die right here in this oven. The drug money is hidden in the RV, and maybe someday someone finds it and gives it to my family.
It is a moment of total bleak defeat for him. But this is exactly where their dynamic completely flips on its head.
Because Jesse Pinkman, this supposed high school dropout, the constant screw-up, he absolutely refuses to accept this fate.
This is such a crucial defining moment for Jesse's character arc. He essentially becomes the sole source of hope in the room.
He goes over to Walt, and he physically shakes him. He loudly challenges him.
He basically yells at him, "You don't get to just lay down and die. You don't get to quit on me. You are the great Heisenberg.
You are a genius scientist. Think of something, anything."
It is a total role reversal. The flunking student is screaming at the arrogant teacher to finally teach a lesson that matters.
And that desperate pleading, that aggressive demand for action from Jesse, it actually triggers something deep in Walt's exhausted brain.
It is the ultimate MacGyver moment.
Jesse is just throwing out these wild, childish ideas, right? Like, can we build a robot to walk out of here? Can we build a dune buggy out of RV parts?
It is scientific nonsense. The core concept gets Walt thinking about the actual physical resources they have around them.
And this brings us to part 5 of our deep dive, science as actual salvation.
This is Breaking Bad doing what Breaking Bad does absolutely best. Using real, grounded chemistry to solve a seemingly impossible physical problem.
Walt suddenly realizes they don't need a functioning gas generator. They just need to move electrons from one place to another. They need to build a battery.
A completely new battery from scratch.
Now, for any listeners who might have comfortably slept through their high school chemistry classes, let's really unpack what they actually do here, because the science of it is brilliant.
A battery, at its most fundamental structural level, is just a simple galvanic cell. You basically only need 3 specific things to make one.
An anode, A cathode and an electrolyte.
Exactly. But obviously they don't have a Radio Shack sitting out there in the scrubland.
So they have to scavenge. They absolutely tear the RV apart looking for parts. For the anode, which is the negative side of the battery, they decide to use galvanized metal.
And galvanized just means the metal is coated in zinc, right?
Correct. Zinc is a specific metal that chemically loves to give away its electrons. So they scramble around and find loose coins, they find metal washers, they find random nuts and bolts.
Anything that has that specific zinc coating on it.
And for the cathode, the positive side that receives the electrons.
They pull the brake pads right off the RV wheels because the RV's brake pads naturally contain mercuric oxide and graphite.
And then they need the electrolyte, the conductive liquid that actually allows the ions to physically flow between the two sides.
And luckily they have plenty of that sitting around. Potassium hydroxide. It is one of the harsh precursor chemicals they brought along to make the meth.
So they take these basic cleaning sponges, they soak them in the caustic potassium hydroxide, and they sandwich those wet sponges tightly between the zinc coins and the brake pads.
What they're building is essentially a voltaic pile, which is actually incredibly ancient technology.
It really is. Alessandro Volta literally invented this exact concept way back in the year 1800.
But applying that exact principle out here in the dirt with just desperately scavenged junk parts, it is pure, unadulterated genius.
They wire these makeshift chemical cells together in a series to create enough cumulative voltage to ideally jolt the RV's starter motor.
The cinematic tension in this specific scene is just off the charts. They hook this ugly, dripping Frankenstein contraption up to the RV engine using their jumper cables.
It literally looks like a middle school science fair project gone horribly wrong.
And absolutely everything rides on this one single moment. The chemical reaction they built isn't infinite. It is degrading quickly. They literally only get one shot at this.
Walt sits down in the driver's seat. Jesse is standing outside gripping the wires, practically praying to any god that will listen.
Walt turns the key in the ignition.
And the engine slowly cranks. It goes, air, air. It heavily struggles.
You're holding your breath watching it.
And then V-room. It completely roars to life.
That sound. It is legitimately the most beautiful sound in the world at that exact moment. The relief washes over you instantaneously.
They start screaming. They are high-fiving each other. They have successfully cheated certain death. They have used their pure intellect to violently defeat the natural elements.
They managed to drive the RV all the way back to Albuquerque. They pull over at the very first gas station they see, and they just forcefully drink water straight out of the outdoor rubber hose like wild animals.
It is a moment of pure, unadulterated victory.
And if this were just a standard Hollywood blockbuster movie, the end credits would proudly roll right there, cue the heroic music, and they lived happily ever after.
But this is not a standard movie. This is Breaking Bad. And Breaking Bad simply does not do clean, happy endings.
Yeah, it does incredibly complicated, messy ones.
Which moves us into part 6 of the outline, the immediate aftermath. And this is exactly where the episode violently shifts from being a tense survival thriller right back into a profound psychological tragedy.
The show's timeline jumps forward a bit. It is now the following week. Walt and his entire family return to that same hospital to finally get the official medical results of that initial PET scan.
Right. And we have to remember the entire chaotic reason for this desert trip, the blind panic, the awful lies to his family, the terrifying near-death experience. All of it happened because Walt confidently looked at that white blob on the screen and unilaterally decided he was dying that month.
So the doctor walks into the examination room, and he doesn't look somber or sad. He actually looks pleased.
He delivers the absolute bombshell news: Walt's lung cancer is officially in remission.
Remission.
The dreaded tumor hasn't grown at all. It has actually shrunk significantly by a massive 80%.
80%. That is practically a medical miracle for his specific prognosis.
And that scary white blob that Walt saw, the visual anomaly he was so arrogantly sure was an absolute death sentence.
Tell us what it was.
It's just basic inflammation. Localized tissue inflammation in his lung from the radiation.
Yeah.
And the scary part where he was coughing up bright red blood in the desert.
That was simply caused by a minor tear in his esophagus from the sheer physical strain of the coughing fits themselves.
It is entirely treatable. It is absolutely not fatal.
So let's be crystal clear about the irony here. Walt was completely wrong. His supposedly flawless genius self-diagnosis was 100% incorrect.
He is not dying immediately. He is going to live.
The family goes absolutely wild with relief. Skyler is weeping tears of intense joy. Walter Jr. is smiling ear to ear. It is objectively the best possible news any of them could ever receive.
But then the camera deliberately looks at Walt.
It just lingers closely on his face. He is technically smiling for them, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes at all.
He looks completely stunned, almost horrified by the news.
And this leads us directly into the final scene, the specific scene that completely defines the thematic weight of the episode.
Walt quietly excuses himself from the joyful celebration. He walks down the hall into the hospital bathroom alone.
He slowly washes his face in the sink. He looks up and just intensely stares at his own reflection in the mirror.
And then what does he do?
He just explodes. He violently punches the heavy metal towel dispenser on the wall.
He doesn't just tap in frustration either. He absolutely smashes it. He puts his entire body weight into the strike.
He permanently dents the thick metal casing. He severely bruises his own knuckles. It is a sudden, incredibly violent and ugly physical act.
And as the audience, we have to stop and ask ourselves why. Why the intense rage?
This is the core psychological question of the character. Most normal people, if they are suddenly told they aren't dying of cancer, they fall to their knees in profound gratitude.
They go out for a fancy dinner to celebrate. They hug their kids a little tighter.
But Walt forcefully punches a wall.
To really understand this reaction, we have to closely examine the internal narrative Walt had been telling himself this whole time.
Exactly. He had carefully constructed an elaborate exit strategy. He had built this comforting mental model where he was the ultimate tragic martyr.
He basically told himself, I will do these terrible criminal things. I will cook poison. I will lie. I will even kill people if I absolutely have to.
But it is completely morally acceptable because I am dying anyway.
Right. I am nobly sacrificing my own pure soul to provide for my innocent family, and then the cancer will conveniently take me away before I have to face the music.
Impending death was his ultimate escape hatch.
It was his personal absolution. If he dies quickly, he never has to explain the mountain of lies to Skyler.
He never has to worry about getting caught by his DEA brother-in-law, Hank.
He never has to sit and face the heavy moral weight of the monstrous actions he has taken. He just drops a giant bag of cash on the table and gracefully fades into family legend.
But now he actually has to live.
He has to live in the exact house he just set on fire.
That is just such a beautifully twisted irony. To him, good news literally feels exactly like a prison sentence.
He is completely trapped by his own survival. He has $672,000 in illegal drug cash that he cannot legally explain to his accountant wife.
He has a volatile criminal partner in Jesse who now fully expects to keep cooking and making millions.
He has a shady criminal lawyer who has his financial hooks dug deep into him.
And he has a deeply suspicious wife who is already starting to ask very difficult questions about his constant absences.
He never actually planned for the long game of life. He only ever planned for the sudden end game.
And that brutal punch, that deep dent in the metal towel dispenser, that is the purely physical manifestation of his immense frustration.
He is furious at the universe because he survived.
It really dramatically reframes absolutely everything we just watched for the last 40 minutes. The agonizing struggle in the desert, the absolute desperation to simply survive the heat.
Only for him to be fiercely angry that he actually succeeded in surviving.
It perfectly highlights the supreme arrogant hubris of Walter White. He honestly thought he could intelligently control absolutely everything in his world, including the exact timing of his own death.
And the universe just looked down at him, laughed, and said, no.
Yeah.
You are staying right here to clean up your mess.
It is brilliant writing. Now, before we wrap up our analysis, we really have to talk about how this episode was physically crafted, because visually speaking, it is absolutely stunning.
Which brings us to part 7. The production details and critical reception. As we mentioned, this episode was directed by Michelle MacLaren,
who is widely considered one of the absolute best directors to ever work on the entire series.
The source material quotes the critic Emily St. James, writing for Slant magazine, who openly called the episode staggeringly beautiful.
She specifically notes how the camera just lovingly drinks in the harsh desert landscape. The deliberate use of color grading is key here. Breaking Bad is famously obsessed with color theory.
Oh, absolutely. You have that glowing, visually oppressive orange of the hot desert sun everywhere.
Which thematically represents the imminent danger, the physical heat, and the mounting psychological pressure.
And that warm orange is sharply contrasted with the cool, sterile blues of the chemical equipment, the raw meth itself, and eventually the freezing night sky.
It highlights the stark visual conflict between the unforgiving natural world and Walt's highly controlled synthetic world.
Another legendary television critic, Alan Sepinwall, heavily praised the distinct Western imagery used throughout. He pointed out the wide tableau shots of the beaten-up RV just resting silently in the tall, dry grass.
He noted that it looks exactly like an old pioneer-covered wagon stranded out on the vast frontier.
It really does evoke that classic, mythic American individualism, right? The rugged cowboy trying to tame the wild.
But the show brilliantly subverts that trope entirely because Walt and Jesse aren't capable heroes taming the land. They're completely incompetent criminals being crushed by it.
And we definitely have to talk about the music, too. The musical soundtrack on this show is always incredibly on point.
The Wikipedia source lists two prominently featured tracks for this episode. First is Good Morning Freedom by Blue Mink.
Oh, that plays during the big cooking montage, right?
Yeah.
It is so upbeat. It has this great groovy 70s soul vibe to it.
It is almost ironically happy in context. Good Morning Freedom. They genuinely feel free out there. They are making endless money with no bosses. It perfectly sets them up for the disastrous fall.
And then there is One by One by the Black Seeds, which plays later and really heavily adds to that thick atmospheric tension as things start going wrong.
So how does this specific episode actually rank for the hardcore fans and critics overall?
Well, the source notes it consistently ranks very high on retrospective lists. The Ringer ranked it 27th out of the 62 total episodes.
And Vulture put it even higher, placing it at 19th overall.
Hitting the top 20 of a show this critically acclaimed is incredibly impressive, especially considering it is an episode that is basically just two sweaty guys arguing inside a broken truck for an hour.
It perfectly proves that you absolutely do not need massive explosions or crazy cartel gunfights to make truly compelling television.
You just need incredibly high emotional stakes and characters that the audience is deeply fascinated by. Oh, and we definitely should briefly mention the guest stars who help anchor this episode firmly in the broader Season 2 timeline.
Right. We get a quick appearance by Bob Odenkirk as Saul Goodman early on. He is the one whose high fees are secretly driving Walt's intense financial pressure.
And Kristen Ritter briefly appears as Jane Margolis. Her quiet presence at the beginning is a stark reminder of Jesse's vulnerable human side, the normal life he desperately wants to get back to. It really is just a perfect storm of an episode. The incredibly tight writing by Sam Catlin, the gorgeous direction, the phenomenal acting from Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul. Everything just clicked perfectly.
It genuinely serves as a flawless microcosm of the entire Breaking Bad series. I often say if you wanted to show someone just one single episode to perfectly explain what the show is fundamentally about without spoiling the actual series finale, this is a very strong contender.
Why do you think that is?
Because it seamlessly blends all the core elements of the show. The hard factual science, the massive unchecked hubris, the terrifying disasters caused by tiny human errors, the desperate ingenuity required to survive them, and most importantly, the deep, dark, twisting complexity of Walter White's psyche.
And the lie. The lie is always sitting right there at the absolute center of it all.
Always. Every action stems from a lie.
So as we finally wrap up this deep dive, let's go right back to that incredibly powerful final image, the dented metal towel dispenser in the bathroom.
It leaves the audience with a really fascinating, provocative thought to chew on.
We spend so much of our waking lives desperately afraid of dying. We endlessly plan for it. We deeply fear it.
But this specific episode forces us to ask the exact inverse question.
What if you spent your time preparing your entire life for an imminent ending? You finally made your peace with the dark void. You deliberately burned all your bridges because you arrogantly thought you would never need to walk back across them.
You said all your silent, cowardly goodbyes.
And then suddenly, completely without warning, the ending gets officially canceled. The house lights abruptly come back on. The dramatic show isn't over yet.
Would you feel profound relief? Or would you feel sheer blinding panic? Would you feel completely trapped by the awful mess you selfishly made while you thought you were saying goodbye?
If you suddenly realized you actually had to stick around and live in the smoking wreckage you created, would you punch the towel dispenser too?
Honestly, I think a whole lot of us probably might. It is the absolute terror of facing the consequences of your own actions.
That is going to do it for our deep dive into 4 Days Out. We really hope you enjoyed this intense trip out into the desert with us. Be sure to stay hydrated out there. Always check your car batteries and maybe just don't leave your keys in the ignition.
And carry extra water. Always carry extra drinking water.
Very sound advice. We will catch you on the next deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Take care, everyone.